Amen. Okay, so this book that we're going to open up tonight, this scroll that has 7 seals, it really outlines the events of the last 7 years of Earth's history. It is that period of time that Jesus called the Tribulation. And it contains the Great Tribulation period, which is the last 3.5 years of the 7-year period that we're going to be looking at in the book of Revelation. And it all centers around the coming of the Antichrist. And then it is finalized by the return of Jesus Christ to the earth. So this book, these events that are outlined in the scroll that we're going to look at are really, really kind of tight. I mean, it's just 7 years. 7 years' time that we're looking at. And in Daniel chapter 9, I'm going to go to Daniel chapter 9. In Daniel chapter 9, we are told about this coming Antichrist who fulfills the last 7 years of the 70 weeks prophecy. 70 weeks prophecy is just God telling the Jews what he was going to do with them, and it covered a period of 490 years. That's the 70 years prophecy. And in the last part of that prophecy, God tells Daniel that there was going to come somebody who is going to deceive the nation of Israel. And it's found in verse 27 of chapter 9. It says, he, and the he is the Antichrist. God is telling Daniel, there's coming someone, and he is the Antichrist that we know of today. He will come and he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7, or 7 years. That's what that means. He's going to confirm a covenant with Israel for 7 years. Now, what kind of covenant is he going to confirm with Israel for 7 years? Well, it's a peace covenant. It's a safety covenant. It's a covenant that he, as leader of the world, is going to make with the nation of Israel, guaranteeing their safety and their right to exist as a nation. Do they have that today? The nation of Israel? Do they have that today? They don't have that today. The nation of Israel doesn't have any secure covenant of safety. They're always in turmoil, right? There's always somebody trying to attack him. Iran is always saying, death to Israel, we're going to wipe you out. They live in a constant state of fear today. Well, Daniel was told there was one who was going to come, who's going to rule the world, and he's going to make an agreement with Israel, guaranteeing their peace and their safety. And it's told about right here in Daniel. He says he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7, or 7 years. In the middle of the 7 years, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. So in the middle of that 7-year period that Daniel was told this ruler would rule and say that he was going to make a covenant with Israel and guaranteeing their peace, in the middle of that 7-year period, he's going to break that covenant and he's going to turn against Israel and try to destroy them. And he will put an end to sacrifice. At that time, he will allow the temple to be rebuilt, but he's going to go in and tell the Jews, you can't worship God anymore, and he's going to try and destroy the Jews. He's going to be a real destroyer of God's people. And so that 7-year period and the events that go on during that 7-year period that Daniel was told about are what we're going to be looking at in the book of Revelation. And so it begins, the 7-year period begins with the entrance of the Antichrist and his covenant with the nation of Israel. Now, Jesus spoke about this same period of time. If you read chapter 24 of Matthew, you know, the Olivet Discourse, where he talks about the coming tribulation, and also in Luke 21, he talks about this period of time also. So it's a very well-known section of time that we're going to be looking at. It's the last 7 years of Earth's history before the return of Jesus to the earth. And it begins with Jesus opening up this scroll that has 7 seals. Now notice what verse 1 of chapter 6 says. Actually, verse 1 and 2. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, Come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow. Hi, guys. And a crown was given to him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Now, most of us have heard of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? You heard of that? The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I don't know anybody that hasn't. Maybe, Malia, have you heard of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse? Not yet. Well, you will tonight. Most people have heard of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. It's a kind of a big deal, and most people are familiar with it. In fact, there's a lot of people today that are getting ready for the apocalypse. We'll talk about that later. But these 4 horsemen that ride forth are really the 4 first seals that are opened up. And the first seal describes this coming horseman. It says, I saw, and behold, a white horse, and him who sat on it had a bow. He had a crown on his head. He went forth conquering to conquer. Now, what these horsemen are going to represent, and actually what the first 6 seals that are going to be opened represent, are a broad overview of the characteristics of the tribulation period. You think the tribulation period is going to be a really bad time, or sort of a bad time, or okay time in the beginning, or not an okay time at the end? I mean, what do you think the tribulation period is really going to be like if you were to make a estimate or a guess on what it's going to be like? It's going to be bad the whole time. It's going to be bad to worse. It's going to be bad to worse. Yeah. Some people think maybe it's not so bad in the beginning. It's going to get worse in the end. Well, we're going to see that the tribulation period is bad from beginning to end. There is nothing good about it. And that's why Jesus said that if it wasn't shortened, no flesh would survive. It's going to be a really bad time. And these 6 seals, as the scroll is opened and he loosed the seals and we see what's in it, we're going to see that it's a really bad time. So we're looking at, in these first 6 seals, a general overview of the characteristics of the tribulation period from beginning to end. He's not giving us any kind of a chronology in this section. He's just saying, this is what the tribulation is going to be like. And the first thing we see is the rider on a white horse. Now, who do you think this rider on a white horse is, who has a bow and a crown, and he's going forth to conquer? Who might this be? Did I hear Jesus? Okay. Okay. Jesus is opening the seals. It's possible. Some people have guessed that this might be a description of the coming of Jesus. Who else might this represent? The Antichrist? No. It might be the Antichrist. In fact, it's my opinion that this is a description of the coming of the Antichrist, not the coming of Jesus. Although Jesus does return on a white horse, we're told later on in the book of Revelation, what is this person holding in his hand? He's got a bow. He's got an instrument of war. When Jesus comes back, he doesn't have a bow. He has the sword of the Spirit, or he has the word of God, which is the sword of the Spirit. It comes out of his mouth, it says, and he slays his enemies. But this one coming has a bow. Why is he described as coming on a white horse? Who comes in on white horses? Jesus?
Malia said normally the good guys.
The good guys, right? That's right, Malia. Good job. The good guys ride in on white horses. I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch The Lone Ranger. What did he ride in on? A big, beautiful white horse called Silver. Yeah, the good guys ride in on white horses.
He was a good guy.
He was a good. Who is? The Antichrist comes in as a good guy. I mean, he comes in offering peace to Israel. He comes in making a covenant. In fact, he is seen as a miracle worker, an amazing politician, a charismatic leader. When he shows up, people are going to receive him as the new Messiah. I mean, he's going to be something else. He's going to be able to bring the whole world together. He's going to bring the Jews and the Muslims together. He's going to bring peace and prosperity. He's going to promise all this stuff. And the world is going to receive him as this great hero, this rider in on a white horse. But notice what it says. He has in his hand a bow. Now that is a bow and arrow kind of bow, not a rainbow or any kind of nice bow. This is a guy who is intent on war. This is a person who wants to come and destroy. And it says a crown was given unto him. Now, who gave him this crown to rule? Who? Satan did. You are absolutely right. This one who is coming comes in the power of Satan.
Well, if he is the Antichrist, that's who would be doing it.
Yeah, he's the Antichrist, and he is the one who comes with the power of Satan. In fact, we read later on that the dragon gives his power to this man. He comes indwelt by Satan himself. That's why he's so powerful. Now, how can Satan give anybody a crown? Is he in charge of this world? Well, actually, he is. He's the prince of the power of this air, it says.
But he is going to be the controller of the tribulation.
He's going to be the controller of tribulation. Now, you remember when Jesus was tempted by the devil? The devil took him to a big, tall mountain. And what did he show Jesus? The kingdoms of the world. He said, you can have all of this right now if you only do one thing. And what was that? Bow down to me, worship me, and I will give this to you. Was that a false offer? No, it wasn't a false offer. He could have given Jesus the kingdoms of the world because Satan is the one.
Sent Satan down to be the ruler of this world.
Well, Satan gained dominion when he caused Adam and Eve to fall and sin. And so Satan actually is the ruler of this world right now. That's why Jesus has to come back and take it back. That's what all of this is about, is the Lord Jesus coming back and reclaiming what God rightfully owns, but that Satan has taken dominion over because of Adam's sin.
And in this verse, Jesus is right there opening the seal for John.
Yeah, so this isn't Jesus on the horse.
Right.
Jesus is opening the seal and showing the coming of the Antichrist. Now notice what it says. He's coming forth to conquering and to conquer. Now this gives you a bit of this insight into the motivation of the Antichrist. He comes in as someone who wants to help, who wants to appease, who wants to bring power. But really what's in his heart? He wants to control and take over. He's a deceiver. Yeah. And so he sits on a white horse because 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 says that he comes and he appears to bring peace and safety, but in fact he is a liar and a deceiver. But he's received as a miracle worker. He had a bow in his hand because although he comes as a hero, he has war in his heart. And he comes to conquering and to conquer, because his intent is not to liberate. His intent is to take over everything and cause the whole world to worship him. So we see this Antichrist, he is a main character in the entire 7-year period of time. So the tribulation, characteristic of the tribulation is this person being front and center. All right, so let's take a look at the second seal. And he opened the second seal, and I heard a second living creature say, "Come and see." And another horse, fiery red, went out. And it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. So this is the second rider in the apocalypse, second horseman. And what's his characteristic? Well, he's the red horse. And the rider on that horse takes peace from the earth. You see, this is why the first horseman couldn't be Jesus, because Jesus doesn't bring in death and all of that, and war, and to take peace. He comes to restore life. This Antichrist shows up on the scene, and right away, although he promises peace and safety, he brings in war right away. Yes, ma'am.
You just said Antichrist.
When Antichrist
But this
shows up.
specific another horse with the rider. That's not the Antichrist.
This rider on a horse is a personification of a characteristic in the tribulation period. This is not a specific person that we're talking about here. The rider on the white horse was Antichrist. This horse represents what Antichrist brings to the earth. And what he brings is war. Some people say, well, the first half is pretty calm. The first half of the tribulation, the first 3.5 years is pretty calm, but the second half is going to be really bad. People that say that are usually those that believe that the rapture takes place in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period. And they'll tell you, well, the first half is pretty bad, then it gets really bad, and then God's going to rapture the church out, and the next half is really, really bad. And but that's not true.
Once God
Hmm?
once the rapture happens and God takes his people out, you think it's going to be pretty much chaos the rest of the time?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
We're seeing that being told us right here. God is giving to us the characteristics of this period. Its characteristic number one was the Antichrist is the main person. The characteristic number two, this horseman represents the war that's going to take place. And he says people will kill one another with a great sword. This is going to be a time of unprecedented destruction on the earth from the very beginning of the tribulation period. Because right away, once the Antichrist comes to power, a war breaks out. We read about that war in Ezekiel chapter 38. It's the war of Gog and Magog when they come and attack Israel. Gog and Magog is Russia and Persia, Iran, Turkey, other nations that hate Israel will come and attack Israel and try and destroy it. So war breaks out right away. And all through this 7-year period is going to be very, very destructive time. In fact, billions of people will perish during this period of time on the earth. Before the advent of nuclear war, it would probably be impossible for billions of people to be destroyed in war. But not anymore. In fact, what God is telling us here is it's inevitable. There's going to be a nuclear holocaust of some kind during the last 7 years of Earth's history.
So before this all happens, the church will be raptured out.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that. Everything that happens from here on out does not apply to us. We are gone. We are raptured out of this world before this all takes place. We will not see this on the earth. We're gone. Many, many, many scriptures tell us that. We did go through some of that in this class. But Jesus said that if this period of time that we're talking about in these seals was not shortened, no flesh would survive. None. Billions of people going to destroy. Now, how about the third seal? And when he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a black horse. And he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." Another distinguishing characteristic of the tribulation period, this 7-year period that we're talking about, is going to be widespread famine and starvation. This is not going to be a fun time, partly because of war. Whenever there's war, famine will follow. But there's other things going on. For example, we are told that the Antichrist is going to make it impossible for anyone to buy or sell anything without his approval, his mark. When does that happen? I think that happens right away.
You think it's going to be right as soon as the tribulation?
I do. The reason I think it's going to be right away is because he is going to begin to exert control over the world from the very beginning. Well, notice what it says. A quart of wheat for a denarius. A quart of wheat was a daily ration for a person during the Roman times. Right? So a quart of wheat. But he says, how much will a quart of wheat cost you? A denarius. A denarius is a week's wages. So you would have to work an entire week just to buy 1 day's food for you. Now, 3 quarts of barley would feed a family of 3 for 1 day. But notice what is being said here. You have to work a week just to buy one day's worth of food. That doesn't take very long until you're starving. You can't work a week for one day's, sustenance. It doesn't work that way. But notice what he says, don't harm the oil or wine. The oil and the wine were the luxuries. The oil and the wine were the things the rich and the privileged could buy. And there'll always be that available to those who will bow their knee to the Antichrist or to go along with his program. You know, during the World War II, you may have not been alive during World War II, but you probably remember they had rationing. They had rationing. You could not go out and buy oil or peanut butter, or you had to have these tickets to buy stuff, and so you went without. Women went without lipstick. They went without nylon stockings. They went without, a lot of things that you could not get unless you were privileged. You could, if you had enough money and were connected correctly, get a T-bone steak every night. You could get whatever you wanted anytime you wanted. During Prohibition, when they got rid of all the alcohol, if you knew the right people, you could get whatever you wanted. It's going to be that way in the tribulation period too. But during this period of time, a characteristic of the tribulation period will be mass starvation, and it will be not a nice time to live. But there will always be those that get what they want. When the rapture happens, we will all be gone. You know what that'll do? Huh?
It's going to cause utter chaos.
Utter chaos. And that's just not in this country, but in the whole world where Christians automatically and instantaneously disappear. This world is going to be plunged into tremendous chaos. And that is when Antichrist will come on the scene and begin to present a system.
He will probably at that point.
Right. So let's look at the fourth seal. And he opened the fourth seal, and I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And the name of him who sat on it was Death. And Hades followed him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, and by the beasts of the earth. So here we see the pale horse of death. The next characteristic of the tribulation period is tremendous death. Now this is a different kind of death than the third seal. Remember the third seal, there was a lot of death there too. Or was it the second one? Let me see. Yeah, second one. Second one was the fiery horse of war. All right. Here is another horse who brings death. But this is a different kind of death. This is a death not only to be killed with the sword, with hunger, but by the beasts of the earth as well. So not only will there be tremendous death as a result of war, there's going to be a tremendous death when the world is completely out of control, including the beasts of the earth are going to be out of control. This is going to be a completely demonically controlled period of time, with the ultimate results of this 7-year period, unspeakable destruction. The stench of death will be everywhere, and there will be no escaping it. This is why I'm kind of not amused, and that's probably the wrong word, but when I hear people that are trying to prepare for the apocalypse, preppers they're called. You ever heard of preppers?
Yeah, like Y2K.
Yeah, I mean, I knew a guy that, when 2000 rolled around, remember Y2K, and the whole world was going to come to an end because of Y2K? Well, he really believed it was the apocalypse that was going to start in 2000. And so what did he do? He went out and built a bunker. He bought 60 acres, and he built a bunker on the 60 acres. And then he went out and he hid food and water at strategic places and in the desert. And he thought that somehow he was going to escape the destruction that is going to come during the time of the apocalypse. But it's silly to think that. You're not going to escape. There's nobody that's going to escape. You can't build a bunker and hide from this. If you're on the earth during this time, you will be affected by it. It's going to be a tremendously terrible time from beginning to end. This writer, just this writer, says he kills over a fourth of the earth. If you can imagine that many people being destroyed in a span of just a 7-year period, World War II was a 4-year period. There was something like 50 million people died, which was tremendous destruction. Almost all of Europe was decimated by World War II. 1.5 billion, 50 million is a drop in the bucket compared to 1.5 million. And that's just this rider. That's not all the deaths that occur on the earth. That's just this guy. That's because the world is out of control. So, all right, so those are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and they give us a general outline of what the tribulation period is going to be like. It's going to be centered around the Antichrist. It's going to be a time of war. It's going to be a time of famine and mass starvation and untold billions of people dying. And we're going to see those right now when the 5th seal is opened. And when he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. Now these people are the ones who come to Christ during the tribulation period. And they are killed. When you believe during the tribulation period and do not bow your knee to the Antichrist, it's death. They will kill you. And these under the altar were slain for the word of God and for their testimony which they held. So some people have asked, are there going to be anybody saved during the tribulation period? Yeah. Probably more than at any period in the history of the world. Notice what he says. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, Oh, how long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth. Then a white robe was given to each of them, and it was said to them they should rest a little while longer until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who would be killed as they were completed. You see, this period of time is going to be a time of mass martyrdom, where everyone who comes to Christ during this period of time will risk death, usually by beheading. That's the death that they talk about. But here are all these people that come out of the tribulation. Later on in chapter 7, we're going to see it's a number that no man can, or an amount that no man can number, that are going to be saved. How are all these people getting saved? Why do you think there's so many people getting saved during the tribulation period? Think of all the people that are sitting on the fence today. They've heard the gospel, they've heard about the coming tribulation, but I don't know, I'm not ready to make a commitment to Jesus or whatever. Or they're in a relationship with somebody who's a Christian and they're not, and all of a sudden their significant other is gone.
What about those people who were saved? Second?
5th seal. And when I opened the 5th seal, I saw the under the altars. And so all of these people, this is a time of tremendous martyrdom of believers. People who come to faith during the tribulation period because of all the things they've heard, because of the things that they're seeing. But you know what else? There's going to be people witnessing on the earth during this day. It's not us. It's not the church.
Isn't that the 144?
That is one group of people that will be witnessing on the earth, 144,000. And we will see those in the next chapter. But there's a number of reasons why this period of time is going to be such a tremendous time of salvation for people. Even though Satan is unleashed on the world and he martyrs millions and billions of people, it is still not going to deter people from coming to Christ during this period of time. But it will not be a time when you can think about it. You're either for God or you're for Satan. It's going to be that black and white. People are going to have to make a decision, and then they're going to have to stick with that decision at the cost of their life. All right, so now when I looked, he opened the 6th seal. And behold, there was a great earthquake. And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair. The moon became like blood. The stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and every island was moved out of its place, and the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave, every free man, hid themselves in caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, hide from us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come. Who is able to stand? This is a characteristic of the tribulation that is about natural calamities. There is going to be, this time is going to be a time of tremendous natural upheaval in the skies, on the earth. Nature itself will become unhinged in ways that are going to terrify people. Now, this is why, and this is another thing I chuckle about when I hear these purveyors of prophecy, these people that put out these newsletters and stuff. Every time there's like 2 comets in the sky at the same time, or every time there's a particularly red moon, especially on a day when the moon corresponds with a feast day in Israel, they start saying, oh, this is the fulfillment of prophecy. The moon will be turned into blood, and there'll be wonders in the sky. I just laugh. They have no clue what they're talking about. This time, when it says the sun is going to be blackened and the moon is going to be turned to blood, these are going to be events that are going to terrify, absolutely terrify people, because they're going to be so unnatural, so devastating. But this period of time, this 7-year period of time, is a time of catastrophic natural disasters. This time both opens and closes with massive earthquakes that will shake the whole earth. Unprecedented astronomical calamities will occur, materializing humanity's worst fears. Asteroid meteor strikes will devastate the planet and result in massive death and destruction. The heavens will be shaken unlike anything before. These are not just curious events that people will wonder about. Oh, wow, big red moon. How about that? And they will say, oh, it's a fulfillment of prophecy. It's not. These will tear at every fabric of our universe with terrifying effects. Notice what these verses say. Massive earthquakes, so massive that every island and every mountain is moved out of its place. Asteroid showers so intense as to be described as stars falling from the sky like figs shaken from a tree by a mighty wind. The sun and the moon absolutely losing their strength, not being able to shine. The atmosphere losing its protective shield as it's rolled back like a scroll. People are going to be scorched from the sun. Inhabitants of the earth will be terrified at the realization of God's coming wrath. I'm going to close with just Isaiah 24, just to put another note of, gee, this is really scary. Yeah, it is. Lumber and pit and snare await you, people of the earth. How would you like that as an announcement on the NBC Nightly News? This comes to you straight from God. Terror and pit and snare await you, O people of the earth. Run for your lives. Whoever flees at the sound of terror will fall into a pit. Whoever climbs out of the pit will be caught in a snare. The floodgates of heaven are open. The foundations of the earth will shake. The earth is broken up. The earth is split asunder. The earth is violently shaken. The earth reels like a drunkard. It sways like a hut in the wind. So heavy upon it is the guilt of its rebellion that it falls, never again to rise. In that day, the Lord will punish the powers in the heavens above and the kings on the earth below. They will be herded together like prisoners bound in a dungeon. They will be shut up in a prison and be punished after many days. The moon will be dismayed, the sun ashamed. For the Lord Almighty will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem and before its elders with great glory. So God has some things planned for this earth.
Is that after the 6th seal is open?
That's after that is the 6th seal. Unprecedented natural disasters, catastrophic destruction on the earth. Okay, who wants to go to the Great Tribulation? Doesn't that sound like a fun time? Yes, sir, indeed.